Welcome back to Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. I'm Magnum, and I'm here to bring you our Week 6 waiver wire recommendations to help you out in your fantasy football leagues. Thank you very much for checking out Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Nice, easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please make sure to touch the thumb. And you should know that for reference, we are getting our ownership information from the ESPN Fantasy Football platform. It is the most popular one, but we are aware that the ownership percentages will vary very much from platform to platform. The bye weeks continue here in week 6, and you will not have access to your Texans and Vikings players, so make sure they are not in your lineups. And if you are starting a couple of those players each week, you are probably going to need some replacements. We're going to see what we can do to help you out here, starting with the quarterback position. Unfortunately, we still have a couple of major quarterback injury issues to deal with here in week 6. If you own Lamar Jackson, do not expect to have him this week. Ravens are on a bye in week 7, so it's very likely they let him sit out at least through that bye week, try to get him as healthy as possible. Also, very doubtful that we see Brock Purdy for the 49ers this week. McCorkle Jones has at least been a decent fill in, so if you've been using him, you could probably continue to deploy him, especially in your 2 quarterback and superflex leagues. As far as priority ads for week 6, going right back to the well, 3rd week in a row here, recommending Matthew Stafford. The Rams quarterback is only owned in about 52% of ESPN fantasy football leagues. He's done it for us twice at least 24 points. Both the previous weeks we've recommended him. Another nice upcoming schedule here. That matchup at Baltimore suddenly looks extremely tasty this week. Then they're at Jacksonville with a bye week and then versus the Saints. So very, very nice upcoming schedule here for Matthew Stafford. Also, don't mind taking a chance on Jackson Dart here, the New York Giants rookie starter, only owned in 44% of ESPN fantasy football leagues. The schedule isn't great. The weapons around him aren't great, but he's got a nice bit of rushing upside here that gives him a decent floor every week. And the Giants are probably going to be playing from behind more often than not, leading to positive game scripts for Dart. Yes, he will make a couple of mistakes here and there. He'll probably have a couple of weeks where he scores single-digit fantasy points and really hurt you, but he'll also probably have a few spike weeks where he can single-handedly be the difference between winning and losing, and that can be the difference getting 25 points from your quarterback instead of 15. As far as speculative ads, I think the primary one is CJ Stroud, the Houston Texans quarterback. He is owned in 61% of ESPN fantasy leagues, so a little bit above the baseline we usually go for here. But in this case, the Houston Texans are on a bye, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him slip down into that 50% range as teams inevitably cut him to deal with their bye week issues and injuries. So if he gets thrown out there, I don't think you can plug him in and say, all right, I got my every week starter. But if you're doing a quarterback by committee thing, I certainly think he could be a viable half or piece of that. So if you have room on your bench, again, I'm not breaking the fab budget here in a 1 quarterback league, but I think he's worth throwing a couple bucks on as he'll probably be one of the better kind of pairing options that'll pop up on the waiver wire, barring major injury or major surprise this season. If you're looking for a streamer this week, I think it probably is McCorkle Jones. The 49ers quarterback is only owned in 2% of ESPN fantasy leagues. Again, if you're in a 2 quarterback super flex league, he is a priority ad. And I would say if you are primarily just using Brock Purdy at quarterback, he is probably worth keeping around as a handcuff unless you have a better option, kind of similar to Marcus Mariota with Jaden Daniels right now. It's a great matchup in week 6 versus Tampa Bay. We saw that game against the Seahawks go over 70 points. They've been involved in a lot of shootouts. Almost every Bucs game has come down to the last play. So it looks like an excellent spot to get a streaming quarterback in. And I guess you could go back to the well if you had to with Bryce Young. The Carolina quarterbacks owned in 18% of ESPN leagues. He fits the golden rule. You start everybody against the Dallas defense. The Panthers are home against the Cowboys this week, so it is what it is. If you're ever going to get a good performance out of Bryce Young, this is probably the spot for it. At running back, we'll start with the injuries before we get on to the big bangs of week 5. Bucky Irving is probably very, very questionable in week 6, especially with the Bucks picking up the win. Rachaad White being very serviceable. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Bucky Irving out at least another week, if not longer. Chuba Hubbard remains questionable for the Carolina Panthers for week 6. I think he's a legitimate questionable, so it's one we're going to have to check back in on later in the week. More on that situation in a minute. And unfortunately, Omarion Hampton, another one bites the dust here for the Chargers. It does not look to be a season-ending injury, but he's got an ankle issue. He's in a walking boot, and Harbaugh said he is headed to IR. Again, more on that situation later in the show here, actually coming right up very, very shortly. But do not cut Hampton. Obviously, you have an IR spot. Tuck him on there. Would it all, if at all possible, unless we get news that he is going to be out, more or less for the remainder of the fantasy season, you want to find a way to keep him on your bench. And then you've got Jaylen Warren, kind of been out of sight here with the Steelers on a bye last week. It does look like Jaylen Warren is projected to be back in week 6 for the Steelers. Tough matchup at home against the Browns, but it will impact, Kenneth Gainwell. He is not going to go ahead and have the kind of game we saw him have there in week 4 across the pond. And generally, we're trying to highlight players that are owned in 50% or less of ESPN fantasy football leagues. But every so often, there are a couple players that are owned in less than 80% of leagues that you look at like, boy, they're really out there in 20, 30% of leagues. So if any of these players are out there on your waiver wire, just go ahead, go for it, do it now. Spend, a decent amount of your fab here, depending on what your needs are. Up top, we have Rachaad White. The Bucks running back is available in 24% of ESPN fantasy football leagues. There was talk of it being a split with Sean Tucker. It was not. White handled most of the work, and then more importantly, all the good stuff, the red zone touches and the work in the passing game. So he is out there, especially if you're a Bucky Irving owner. I think you can feel free to go up to probably 40-ish% of your fab. It's not going to be an all year thing, but we've seen foot injuries linger for running backs as a Bucky Irving owner. I hope that is not the case, but it does make Rachaad White probably the most valuable handcuff right now in terms of what you're going to get in terms of immediate production and what he can offer to you here going forward if this foot issue proves to be an ongoing thing with Bucky Irving. And then you've got our boy Bill, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. He's available in 29% of ESPN fantasy leagues. Reasserted himself this week. Definitely the head man in the rotation. There will be some lean weeks, some weeks where it's going to just be a Chris Rodriguez game, maybe a Jeremy McNichols game even. Who knows? Maybe they'll bring someone off the practice squad, what have you. But for now, I think Bill is your guys. If he's out there, I think he has the potential to eventually take over this committee. That's something Rachaad White doesn't have the potential to do if Bucky Irving does get healthy. So I'd go a little bit higher probably with Bill here on your fab. I would probably go 50 to 2/3, 50 to 66% of your fab. Again, I think this is a spot. The deeper we get in the season, the less likely there are for huge names to pop on the wire like this. So if he's somehow out there in your league, I think go ahead, throw at least half your fab at him. And then you have Rico Dowdle, owned in 59% of leagues. So again, it was picked up a little bit before all of this happened. There was some preemptive picking up, and then once the news that Hubbard was out hit, he was snapped up due to the nice matchup against the Dolphins. I mean, he came through. He's the running back one on the week. He's pretty much locked into your lineup. I don't know if he's going to be a full-on RB1, but if Hubbard is not out there, he's at least a high-end RB2 for you. And I think he can do enough here to at least force this into some kind of timeshare. Unfortunately, that will probably hurt both players, but it also makes them both worth owning. So Dodo will probably be more than just a 1 week fill-in. But, we don't know. Maybe Hubbard misses multiple weeks going forward. I don't think that will be the case, but we don't really know as of recording this. So I think you go ahead, probably throw up to about half your fab out there on Dodo. There is a chance they just go back to Hubbard. They did give him the contract. Maybe this does settle down and he winds up being just a handcuff. But after that performance, even against the matchup it was, I think you have to go ahead and do some decent speculation here because every once in a while, something like this turns out to be a real thing. And if it is, this is probably one of your last chances to get on a train like this before it's leaving town. As far as priority ads, you might have forgotten about him, but Kenneth Gainwell is available in 53% of ESPN leagues. The Steelers running back was, I believe, the RB1 back in week 4 across the pond there, 30 plus PPR points. Jaylen Warren is expected to return, but this was already a bit of a committee before the injury. Now this has a chance to turn into a pretty much a 50-50 committee slash hot hand situation. Gainwell has shown he is definitely worth rostering in all formats, although I don't know if you'll be able to start him this week. And then welcome welcome back, Mr. Carter. Michael Carter, the former Jet, now on the Arizona Cardinals, is available in 58% of ESPN leagues. Had a nice performance getting the start in place of the injured Trey Benson. Does look like he is the guy getting first crack at the majority of the early down work. Expect DeMarcado to still be in there on passing downs. McCarter's got a shot at getting some goal line work as well. They do also have Bam Knight down there. Could again be a hot hand situation. So I wouldn't go absolutely nuts with my fab bids on Carter, but I think he's worth somewhere between probably 25 and 33% of your fab, somewhere in that range. And then you have the Chargers. I don't know what they do. It's entirely possible they bring back the Gus Bus. They could sign somebody else. They could make a small trade, but for now, you're looking at Kimani Vidal and Hassan Haskins. Both are available in more or less 100% of ESPN fantasy leagues. This will probably be a committee situation. Harbaugh likes to use two running backs to begin with. I'm sure they're going to bring somebody else in. It's just a matter if they bring somebody else in who can make an immediate impact. If I have to pick and choose, I'm probably going with Vidal. He's a home run hitter, more upside in the passing game, but I think Haskins probably outsnaps him and gets the goal line work. So 6 and 1, half dozen in the other. I think you have to take a chance here again, probably in that 25 to 33% range of your fab. You don't want to go nuts here because there's no way you can guess right. There's a chance Hampton comes back after the 4 minimum weeks on IR. So I think you kind of split the difference here, 25 to 33% of your fab. I would go with Vidal, especially in PPR leagues, but I think both deserve to be owned until we see how this shakes out. And then maybe I'm just a stan, but I'm going back to the one with Tajay Spears. He's available in 72% of ESPN fantasy football leagues. The Titans coaches have indicated that they want to get him more involved. They need somebody, they need anything. Tony Pollard is very, very fine. He's getting more or less what's blocked. He's not a negative, but he is not really adding anything. He is not part of the future of the Titans going forward. Spears has a chance to be, so I expect him to be featured. If nothing else, I can meet some nice garbage time production in check downs, dump off passes, that sort of thing. So another guy I think should be rostered, even if he's not going to be startable for you right away. Then, if you're speculating at running back, I think you can still take a look at Bashal Tutin. The Jaguars rookie is available in 64% of leagues. More of a handcuff right now. He's still getting a couple of touches each week. Hasn't gotten a chance to do much with them since the first 2 weeks, but I still believe in the talent. I'm talking him on benches where I see fit. But again, don't go nuts on your fab here. Just a couple of percents, 5% or less. You should be able to pick him up. And you also should be owning the big handcuffs where possible. That means Brian Robinson Jr. He's the Christian McCaffrey handcuff for the 49ers. He's out there in 65% of leagues. Tyler Algier of the Falcons, the handcuff to Bijan Robinson. He is out there in 68% of leagues. I also like speculating on Kendre Miller. He's out there in 79% of ESPN leagues. He is currently the backup to Alvin Kamara, but he's been getting more work the past couple of weeks. Former third round pick, has some talent, and there are talks that the Saints could be willing to trade away some of their veteran talent. I think Kamara would be at the absolute top of that list, which would leave Miller a nice landing area here, a nice runway to maybe have a good fantasy season down the stretch and be a useful asset. So another guy I think should be picked up in most leagues. This is one where you want to get ahead of the crowd. Should only cost you a couple of bucks to do so in your fab now, but if you wait, it might cost you far, far more than that. And Blake Corum of the Rams continues to interest me. He's available in 84% of leagues. Kyron Williams is right there with Ramondre Stevenson for the worst case of fumbleitis in the NFL. Corum didn't do himself any favors by mishandling a pitch from Stafford that basically got him benched. So Williams never really had to pay for the fumbleitis. We've seen Corum look really, really good this season. The Rams are not above just bringing in a running back and just making him the guy, kind of. We've seen it happen before. It's more or less how Kyron Williams got the job in the first place. So another guy I'm trying to speculate on wherever possible. And then if you are in deeper leagues, I think you could take a chance on Isaiah Davis. Again, PPR only here, but the Jets running back is probably going to catch 4 or 5 passes a game. Maybe not going to do a ton with them, but we saw Brees Hall check out of the game momentarily with an injury in week 5. If something were to happen, Davis is the last man standing for the Jets. So if possible, tuck him on the end of your bench. I also continue to tuck Brashard Smith, the Kansas City Chiefs rookie running back, wherever I can. He's available in 95% of leagues. Former wide receiver. You can see the athleticism in the kicking return game. He was active on offense again last night. His role has continued to grow by the week. I don't know if he's ever going to be a high volume player this year, but he certainly could be with 12 touches, a fantasy worthy player in PPR league, certainly as a flex or even a running back too, depending on the matchup, given the state of the running back position right now. So just something to think about. And then finally for the Cardinals, don't forget about Bam Knight. Yeah, Michael Carter is in the lead over there, but Knight is available in basically every single ESPN league. Won't cost you much in Fab. And if Carter were to get hurt, fumble, just have a bad couple of series, Knight will get his shot. And if he does well, they'll ride the hot hand. They've said they're going to do so. So again, if you have room, don't spend a lot of Fab. Don't cut anybody important. But if you can, tuck them on the back of your bench. The wide receiver ads are a bit thin this week. As far as priority ads, I think you could probably go back to the well with Romeo Dubs, available in about 55% of ESPN fantasy leagues. I don't think you can expect consistency. I certainly would not expect a repeat of the three touchdown game he had against the Cowboys. But right now, the Packers are kind of an everybody eats situation with Josh Jacobs dominating around the goal line and Tucker Kraft kind of being second in line. But at least of the wide receivers, I have the most confident in Dubs to be consistent right now. I'm still hoping Matthew Golden pops sooner than later. Sometimes we see rookies take a step forward going out of the bye week. But I think if Dobbs is out there again, another guy worth picking up. And if you're in a desperation spot, he's got the perfect matchup this week at home against the Bengals. So if nothing else, he's a very adequate wide receiver three or flex this week. And maybe it's just me, but I'm continuing to prioritize Torrey Horton, the rookie wide receiver for the Seahawks, available in about 96% of ESPN leagues. Scored a TD for the third time in 4 games, has yet to exceed 4 targets in a game. Maybe it's a little disappointing he didn't do so in a game where over 70 points were scored, but the talent jumps off the page. I think by the end of the season, he is going to work himself into a larger role on that offense. You've seen Darnold be willing to take the shots here. He's got, again, it just dripping upside here. I don't think Cooper Kupp is long for fantasy relevance. I mean, he's fine. He could probably fade into an Adam Thielen-like role where, he's a semi-useful NFL player. He'll have the occasional spike game. But I think Torrey Horton is really an excellent complement to Jackson Smith and Jigba. So if you can, try to put him on the roster wherever you can going forward. Tuck him on the bench. And if you're desperate, you could certainly do worse as a dart throw. Again, scored a touchdown 3 of the last 4 games. Also scored a return touchdown, I believe, on the season. Tons of big play potential, and they look to him in the red zone. So very, very important things. As far as speculative ads, I'm still on Troy Franklin, the Denver Broncos sophomore wide receiver, available in 56% of ESPN leagues. Again, just missed on a big play here. It's going to happen sooner than later. He's consistently there, second in targets on the team behind Sutton, more or less kind of splitting that secondary role with Mims, but he's playing more snaps than Mims. You can see the level of trust Bo Nix has with him dating back to their collegiate career together. So I think another nice guy to go ahead, put on your bench. At this point, if he's out there in your league, shouldn't cost you more than 5% of your fab. I don't mind speculating a little bit on Josh Downs. The Colts wide receiver is available in 57% of ESPN leagues. Fine as a wide receiver four in a PPR league. If one of the Colts guys is out, as we saw this week with no Alec Pierce, he can be a wide receiver three. Unfortunately, he's not going to return to that kind of solid wide receiver two territory we saw last year, but he is worth rostering in those deeper PPR leagues if you have the space. I continue to speculate on Elic Ayomanor, the rookie wide receiver for the Titans, available in 62% of leagues. I like the talent. 2 quiet weeks in a row. They don't have anybody else out there. Sooner or later, he will be featured more prominently. The offense will open things up a little bit as the season goes on, basically because they have to. So I continue to keep him on my bench, pick him up wherever possible, although he would be tough to start at this point. Also, don't mind Christian Kirk, the veteran slot receiver for the Texans, is available in 69% of ESPN leagues. Very solid bye week filler here, wide receiver four, a little bit of touchdown upside. It seems like things are coming together a bit for that Texans offense. If they really get it together, returning to kind of the wide receiver three ranks isn't out of the question for Kirk. It's still not that old, in a decent spot here. The Texans really just need to get that line figured out. For 1 week facing the Baltimore Ravens was the remedy. They're on the bye. Let's see how they look coming out of the bye. So I expect Kirk to get dropped in a lot of leagues. You should be able to pick him up for a minimum bid. I don't really believe in Kendrick Bourne. I did enjoy the Bourne identity, and he's a fun player who spikes once in a while. The 49ers receivers out there in 93% of leagues. It's pretty simple. If one of Juwan Jennings or Ricky Parasol is out and Mac Jones is a quarterback, I'm okay with throwing him in there as a flex. If both receivers are out and Mac Jones is in a quarterback, I'm going to have interest. They have a connection dating back to the Patriots days. There's not a lot of other options out there on offense for San Francisco. So in those specific scenarios, I'm okay with it, but he's really more of a streaming option than anybody I think is going to have continuing value. You could say the same thing about Ryan Flournoy, the Cowboys wide receiver. Came out of nowhere to post the most surprising 100-yard performance of the day. Maybe the main takeaway is it's just not going to happen for Jalen Tolbert, no matter how many times they try to talk him up. If Lamb is out, you need to take a shot, and Turpin's out. I guess Flournoy's your guy, but for the most part, he's not someone I'm really interested in investing in. And then finally, two guys I continue to speculate on long term. Luke McCaffrey, the Commanders wide receiver, only owned in 5% of ESPN leagues, and Isaiah Bond, rookie wide receiver for the Browns, only owned in 4% of ESPN leagues. Both players have seen their roles grow in recent weeks. I expect that trend to continue throughout the season. Yeah, you could probably wait a few weeks, but this is one of those cases. If they pop, it's going to be very, very costly to pick them up. So the time to invest might be now. When McLaurin comes back, that will take, that will the eventual return of Terry McLaurin will hurt McCaffrey's prospects a bit, but I still like the talent here, so I'm tucking him where I can. We see him score a couple of touchdowns, got another big play, a 50-yarder last week, so he's decent, kind of what the heck's Hail Mary flex if you need something like that in week 6, assuming Terry McLaurin is out once again. From the window to the Waller. It happened again. Oops, he did it again. But before we get down from the window to the Waller, here are a couple do it now tight ends. These guys are owned in more than 50% of ESPN leagues, but somehow not owned in more than 80%. So they're kind of in that weird medium there that they're not available in a majority of leagues, but they might be available in your league. And if they are, go ahead, pick it up. You're going to throw a large percentage of your fab at them. Just do it. Do it now. Up top, you have Dalton Kincaid. He's available in 22% of ESPN leagues. I believe he's the tight end two on the season, coming off a career high game here. Still not playing the snap count that we want, but he's very, very involved. Right now, maybe the most consistent receiving option for the Buffalo Bills. So that sounds like a guy you want, even if he played wide receiver. He happens to play tight end, which is the toughest position to fill in fantasy football. So if Dalton Kincaid is out there, do it now. 50 to 66% of your fab, maybe even up to 75% if you've really got a black hole at tight end. So do what you got to do. And then you've got Kyle Pitts, the senior. He is out there in 37% of ESPN leagues with the Falcons coming off a bye. Been a little bit inconsistent, but this has easily been the best start to a season for him since his rookie year, making a push in a contract year. Lots to like here. Michael Penix Jr. has not been consistent, but he has shown an ability to get the ball to Drake London, to Kyle Pitts, to Bijan Robinson, and that's what we like. On a lower level with this, you have Evan Ingram. He's available in 48% of leagues. Finally did a little something for the Broncos here. I don't think he is going to, give the returns. Oh, he's going to be the new Joker. He's going to have kind of the Camara role. That sort of preseason talk was just that preseason talk. But he could certainly work himself into a more consistent role for the Broncos here. So I don't know that I would go crazy for him. But, 25% of your fab in a league where you have a big need at tight end, I think it's a perfectly fair bid, and you should probably get him. And then we have the Darren Waller available in 52% of ESPN leagues. Very obvious that he is going to be featured. I don't think they're going to use him as a full-time player, which is smart. I think the target this week was 30 to 35 snaps. And I think maybe he gets into that 45-50% or 45-50 snap range or so, and that's probably it for the most part. But that should be plenty if he continues to produce how he is. There's no reason, barring injury, to think that he can't. Unfortunately for Waller, injuries are a huge deal, and it's really, really tough to imagine him sustaining this for the whole season. That being said, the production has been fantastic. So if he is still out there, I think you owe it to yourself, if you have any kind of need a tight end, to at least throw that 25% of your fab. If you want to go up to 50, you can. I think somewhere in that depends on your need, depends on your comfort level with the injury risk involved here. But with the absence of Tyreek Hill, there's certainly a target void to be filled on that Dolphins offense. And they really lack a big body in the red zone. So if nothing else, he could just make his money down in the goal line area. So we like that from the window to the Waller. Probably only one kind of priority had here. Continue to try to add the Browns rookie tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., wherever possible. He is available in 76% of ESPN leagues. The role is a touch inconsistent, but they use him in numerous ways, including with David Njoku. They continue to try to get him involved. It looks like he's got a nice connection with rookie quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Lots to like here. Again, if he's still out there, probably should be able to get him for 5 to 10% of your fab. And then if you're speculating, maybe it's getting Otten here. Cade Otten, the Bucks tight end, available in 92% of leagues. Seen his role grow the past couple of weeks. As their offensive line gets healthier, he should run more routes, but you also see their wide receiver core get a little bit healthier. Perhaps the absence of Bucky Irving helps him out with some additional short area targets. But you could do worse if you're playing tight end by committee, that kind of thing. You could probably pick him up for a min bid. Hope the Bucks get involved in another shootout. They've tended to do that this season, so you've got that going for you at least. Hope it's getting hot in here. I'm excited about Mason Taylor. The Jets' rookie tight end has seen his production increase 3 straight weeks. Turned in a nice tight end one performance in week 5. He's available in 92% of leagues. Not much to trust on the Jets offense, but right now they have their 3 North Stars. You have Fields, you have Hall, you have Wilson. They're really looking for anybody else to step up. There's a reason they spent a high draft pick on Mason Taylor. It looks like he might be capable of kind of stepping up and filling some of that void. So again, if you're struggling at the tight end position, go ahead, pick him up. 5 to 10% of your fab should probably do the trick in most leagues. And then how about Theo Johnson, the Penn State alum? Kind of arrived here. The sophomore scored 2 touchdowns, which helped the Giants, but not enough. Unfortunately, they lost to the Saints. I've been very interested to see how the Giants are filling the Malik Neighbors void here. I thought that Johnson could be a big part of it, especially in the red zone. At least for 1 week, it paid off. There is obviously going to be a ton of inconsistency, given the state of that offense and the presence of a rookie quarterback under center. But I still have a lot of faith here. I think almost all tight ends out of the top few are always going to be boom or bust options. So at least give me the young guy on an offense. It's got nothing to lose. They're playing a little bit loose. Defense, I could give him some game scripts where they wind up trailing. They got to air it out a little bit. So again, I'm not busting the bank for him, but go ahead, throw that 5-10% of your fab at Theo Johnson if you're looking to try to, patch together a tight end by committee situation or something of that nature. And then if you are looking for a couple of 1 week streamers in week 6, we have 2 for you. Up top, you have A.J. Barner, the Seahawks sophomore tight end. He is available in 99% of leagues. We have the Seahawks traveling to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars. He's got 4 TDs on the season, at least 10 PPR points in 3 of the last 4 games. Myself, like a lot of people, I think we are waiting for rookie Elijah Arroyo to take a bigger role. But so far this season, it's been Barner. He surprised last season. Their comfort level with him was part of the reason they were willing to release Noah Fant before the season. I don't know if I believe it in terms of a season long breakout or him being, kind of quote unquote for real, for real. The Seahawks especially have a history of these tight ends having spike games, Will Disley, Colby Parkinson, Noah Fant himself. We've been down this road before, so I'm not busting the fab budget for him or anything. But if you're looking for a 1 week streamer, I think you could certainly do worse than Barner at the Seahawks. And then you could get 1 more week out of Jake Tonges. The 49ers tight end is available in 95% of ESPN leagues. For a second there, it sounded like Kittle might be ready to return in week 6 when first available, but it now sounds like week 7 will be his earliest return point. The 49ers get that sweet matchup at Tampa Bay. We just saw what Barner did to the Bucks last week. Generally, the Bucks games have been close affairs that tend to be on the high scoring side, so a lot to like there. He's gotten some looks in the red zone. Again, this is a 49ers offense that is in shambles in terms of injuries, so you want to go where the opportunity is. And right now, there's a lot of opportunity on that San Francisco offense, and they look to be in a good spot traveling to Tampa Bay to face that leaky Bucks pass defense.
Are you in there, baby? Yeah. Starting defense. Place at the table.
Cash rules everything around me. Wu-Tang rules the universe, and starting defense deserves a place at the table. In honor of Latimer and one of our favorite 90s throwbacks, the program, we're going to give you a couple of streaming defense special teams options for you in week 6. We have 3 for you here, starting up top with the Los Angeles Rams. They are available in 51% of ESPN leagues. What a world. We are picking a streaming defense on the road at Baltimore, and it looks to be a fantastic play. The Rams defense has underperformed somewhat this season, but you saw what is, I wouldn't say underperforming, but I don't think the Texans defense had quite lived up to expectations. They absolutely smashed the Ravens. Does not look like they're going to be able to get anything going with Cooper Rush under center. Even if they throw Tyler Huntley out there, I do not expect the results to be much different. So shut down King Henry, shut down the Ravens. I expect the Rams to do so. Love them this week as a streaming option, and I think they'll have some utility going forward as well. And then you have the easy one. The Green Bay Packers are at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. They are out there in 54% of leagues coming off the bye. They have been a bit disappointing. Enough can't be said about them giving up the, what was it, 40 points to the Cowboys. That was fairly ridiculous. There is a chance that the Bengals get some garbage time production here, and that hurts the scoring a little bit. But I expect them to be able to rack up the turnovers and sacks against a Jake Browning-led offense that's really struggled to do absolutely anything outside of garbage time, and maybe his initial relief of Burrow in the game where Burrow was hurt. And the Packers will be an excellent option going forward. So if I had to pick a priority of the three, they're probably at the top due to the utility to use going forward. So you could probably spend more like, 10 to 12% of your fab on them as opposed to probably 3 to 5% for these other options. And the final option here, you have the New England Patriots DST available in 76% of leagues. They gave the Buffalo Bills all they could handle, forced a couple of turnovers in that Sunday Night Football upset. Now they're traveling down to New Orleans. Spencer Rattler has quietly been very careful with the ball, hasn't taken a lot of sacks, but you feel like eventually the tables are going to turn there just a little bit. If you can get Josh Allen to turn it over, perhaps they can rattle Spencer Rattler. If nothing else, it looks to be a low scoring affair. You get a couple of sacks to turnover. And the Patriots have also been decent in the return game here, so return touchdown isn't out of the question. The least favorite of my three options, but I like the matchup in the leagues that penalize heavily for getting a lot of points scored on you. I think they're an excellent option because I'm not really worried about the Saints racking up a 30 burger or anything like that this week. I think that about does it for the week 6 waiver wire recommendations. You have any questions, thoughts, what have you, please let us know in the comments or on social media. Once again, this has been Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Thanks for checking out the show. Find our content wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Very simple, very easy to remember, just like those flaps. FLAPS. Very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please hit that thumb. I'm Magnum Mills. Thanks again for checking out the show. Good luck this week, and make sure you are checking out the channel because we have more stuff to help you in week 6 dropping just about every day. Remember, you need to seize the gap and stop being so inefficient.
369, damn,